Have you ever met someone who felt like your soulmate but ended up breaking you in ways that you never even thought possible? You knew it was toxic. You could see the red flags, and yet something just kept pulling you back. You thought you could handle it because the highs were so euphoric, the connection electric, but the crashes were devastating. I'm Lise, Leblanc, therapist, author, and life coach, and in today's video, I want to walk you through a real-life story that highlights how trauma bonds, emotional manipulation, and your own unresolved wounds can draw you into toxic dynamics, even when you instinctively and rationally know better. So a man recently wrote to me with a story that I think will resonate with many of you. Of course, details have been changed to ensure complete anonymity and protect his confidentiality. So let me start by telling you the story, and at the end, I'll answer the 3 questions that he asked me. First question, did I dodge a bullet? Second question, do you think she's a narcissist or has borderline personality disorder? Third question, how do I forget about her? So here's what Ken shared with me. He met a woman who we'll call Sarah and was instantly attracted to her. Their chemistry was off the charts. They didn't immediately act on this attraction because they were both in other relationships, but they continued their connection through texts and calls, which ended up leading to secret online meetups. And at first, their interactions were mainly emotional, but it became more than that. So Ken ended up breaking up with his partner, and Sarah also promised to do the same, but she always had excuses of why she couldn't do it right away. So they started meeting up in person, creating elaborate fantasy dates where they would connect in deeply erotic and emotional ways under the promise that they would soon be together fully. So he felt really guilty about being the other man, and she expressed tons of shame about cheating on her current partner, but nevertheless, they continued down this path, which soon became more like an obsessive roller coaster ride with all the push, pulls, up, down, idealization followed by devaluation. So there were these intense meetups filled with, sex, laughter, conversations that lasted for hours, and all the declarations of being soulmates and making promises of creating this fantasy future together. And then there was the chaos that followed. Sometimes she'd create a fight out of thin air, block him, or break up. Sometimes she'd blame him. Other times she just felt super guilty, expressed shame and fear, saying things like, I hate myself for doing this. I feel like a terrible person. But no matter how intense her regret sounded in the moment, she'd never follow through on actually leaving her partner. Actually, that's not quite true because sometimes she'd break up with him for a couple of days in order to make herself feel better about their meetups. And this became a heartbreaking pattern that went on for years. And whenever things got more real, whenever Ken asked her to finally commit, to take the leap, her fear overwhelmed her and they'd hit a wall. She'd shut down, say she wasn't ready, she was confused, and she'd spiral into anxiety and shame storms. She would emotionally distance herself, or like I said, she would just end it for a while. And this would obviously leave him feeling betrayed and abandoned, but she would always come back, maybe days, maybe weeks, sometimes even months later, and they'd both quickly fall right back into the cycle. In longer breakups, he'd try to date other women, but everything paled in comparison. There just wasn't the same chemistry and intensity, that love he felt for Sarah. But after going through this cycle so many times, it was getting harder for him to believe or accept these emotional breadcrumbs. And he was starting to realize that in reality, his fantasy future was actually becoming a nightmare. And the worst part was he could see the pattern, he could see the cycle, and he could see how his mental health was unraveling. He knew she was never going to leave her partner. Her words just didn't match her actions. And in fact, she actually married the other guy. And by then, Ken was so emotionally invested, so trauma bonded, that even this didn't set him free. So the affair continued on the side, and Ken kept holding on to hope, even though he partially knew that this fantasy would never be reality. And even though he was unraveling, becoming more anxious, more obsessed, blaming himself for investing so heavily and drowning in guilt and shame over some of the choices he'd made along the way. And yet he's still clinging to that illusion, believing that this is love, that Sarah is his soulmate, and that maybe despite all this pain and suffering, they're destined to be together. And that sunk cost mindset, that fear of wasting all that time, energy, money, kept him from letting go. But here's the truth. Staying in something that is destroying your self-worth and your mental health is not love. It's addiction. And Ken's story is a powerful example of how even smart, self-aware people can get caught in toxic emotional loops. And after sharing his story, Ken had some questions for me. And it's the kind of questions I hear from so many people in similar situations. So let's go through them together. Question number 1, did I dodge a bullet? Well, here's how I'd put it. You didn't take the bullet to the head, but you did get hit, and you got wounded, but you survived. And even though you didn't walk away unscathed, in the grand scheme of things, the fact that you didn't end up marrying her, where she'd probably be having an affair with some other guy behind your back, repeating the same chaotic cycle, that's where you did dodge a bigger bullet. And for those of you who did go down that path, I know many of you did, let me just say that no matter how deeply you invested in the relationship or where you took the hits, if you're still here and you survived, then there's still an opportunity to heal, to learn, and to rebuild. Because in the long run, if you use this experience to better understand yourself, to own your own patterns, get why you were drawn in, why you stayed, and what unresolved emotional wounds were being reenacted through this relationship, then ultimately the investment could still pay off. And believe me, there is life on the other side of this toxic relationship. Question number 2, is she a narcissist or does she have BPD? I can't diagnose her obviously, but it sounds like she has a lot of past trauma and that your relationship is a trauma reenactment to some extent. The key thing here is that regardless of any specific diagnosis, her behavior has a clear and destabilizing effect on you. And that's what matters most. Sadly, many people often weaponize their pain and put it on others without realizing it or without taking responsibility for the emotional damage that they're leaving behind. So whether it's narcissism, BPD, unresolved trauma, or just emotional immaturity, it doesn't change the fact that the dynamic between the two of you was toxic, unpredictable, and painful. And if you need help healing from this, consider reaching out to a therapist in your area or check out my online programs that I linked in the description section of this video. Question number 3, how do I forget about her? So the goal isn't to forget. It's to understand why she had such an emotional hold on you and to integrate this painful experience. And this starts with grieving the fantasy. What you might be missing isn't just her, but it's that intensity, it's that validation, it's those emotional highs, and maybe even the chaos that fed the addictive nature of the relationship. So when you begin to see things more clearly and you consistently refocus your psychological energy over time, the trauma bond will start to loosen its grip on you. But it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Like breaking any addiction, this is a painful process, so expect it. You will experience cravings, intrusive thoughts, and emotional urges pulling you back in. And each time you go back for another hit, Even if it's just in your mind, you are prolonging the agony. So I'd suggest that you do everything in your power to change your internal narrative. Stop telling yourself that this is love, that she's your soulmate, that what you had was so special and meant to be. These stories are part of the hook, and they will keep you emotionally tethered. So instead, start facing reality. Start facing that pain head on. And most importantly, what you need now is self-compassion, not self-punishment. You need clarity. You need support. So if you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to learn more about BPD relationships, please click on the link above.